Go ahead.
I really wanted to thank you guys, Sustainable Rossmore, for allowing me to present on this, since it's not exactly a landscape topic, but it's something that's very important to me. And I will repeat that information as Barry mentioned. I'll pull up the slides and then we'll do a 10-second pause so that there's an easy place for the Rossmore News Channel 28 to edit it out in case we want to run it with the Channel 28 programming at some point. So go ahead and get started. Okay, is everybody looking at, food waste is water waste, one big screen? Okay,
yes,
so
looks good.
I will do a quick pause then. Okay, thank you again, Sustainable Rossmore, for having me speak about food waste. I am Rebecca Pollen, the landscape manager, but I am coming to you today from a personal standpoint, just as Rebecca, because this is something that is important to me, and hopefully this won't autoplay forward too much. But I want to talk about how food waste is affecting our water supply. There's a lot of doom and gloom information, but it's actually very hopeful because there is a lot we can do about it, and there's very, very easy steps we can take to start to curtail our food waste issue. So at the very end, we'll be talking about 3 easy tips for reducing waste, conserving money, and saving our water one bite at a time. This presentation is about 12 minutes long, so if you have a short attention span like I do, then you'll be just fine. So general statistics, globally, about 1/3 of all food is wasted. In the United States, it's higher. It's between 30 and 40%, depending on who you ask. And that is the equivalent of 1.3 billion tons of food each year, $1 trillion in expenses each year, and enough food to feed more than 3 billion people. If food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd highest emitter of carbon dioxide at 4.4 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide. That's more than India, the entire country. So China is the largest emitter as a country. Yours truly, the US, is second, and then it's food waste, again, even more than the entire country of India, which is sort of shocking. The amount of land devoted to food waste is larger than the US and Central America combined. And quite a few experts say that addressing food waste may be the most important thing we can do to fight climate change. So let me illustrate just how ridiculous this whole problem is. We're going to go through the life cycle of food waste. So there's the obvious part of planting seed, growing it, and irrigating. And this is really where the majority of the water comes in. And then, of course, you have to tend to your crops. So you're fertilizing, you're maybe using pesticides, you're pruning, and you are harvesting. And then you are packaging it and shipping it. This will be the food waste's first ride to the processing plant, where food is, in some cases, washed, processed, mixed in with other ingredients. You make pastas, you make whatever it is, or maybe it's just cut into pieces of meat, or maybe it's just fruit that's further packaged for transport to the next location. And one thing we cannot talk about food waste without mentioning is the plastic and materials waste. Everyone on this call has shopped at a grocery store, obviously, or you probably wouldn't be alive. And you really can't purchase food without also purchasing waste. Even if you bring your own bags, sometimes that just doesn't cut it. So this isn't just a food problem, it's also a packaging problem. I could not find any data on how much packaging waste is attributed to food waste, but just from common sense, I think it would be a lot. So back to our presentation. So we've already taken our first ride to the food processing plant. Once that's all done, we then take our second ride to the supermarket, where people like all of you and myself will go to shop for our food. And then we take it on its third ride back to our homes, where we clean it, cut it, prep it, cook it, mix it, and serve it. At which point we will throw whatever it is that is not used away. along with all of the packaging that it came in. And then we package the packaging in another bag so that it can be disposed of cleanly and nice and organized. At which point it takes its fourth ride to either the dump, depending on whether the packaging is recyclable, or to be processed into compost. So going back to the first component of that, we're going to specifically talk about water and why food waste is so water intensive. So in California, after environmental releases, the end user water consumption, 80% of all of that goes to agriculture. And we have to grow food. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But I do want to put into perspective that all of the landscaping, residential and commercial in the state accounts for only 10% of our water supply, and indoor 10%. So while it's incredibly important that we conserve that 20%, we still really need to address the elephant in the room, and that's the agriculture water use. So of that water use, if you calculate 40% of 80%, what do you get? 32%. So again, we're talking about 3 times all the water used in the landscape, 3 times all the water used inside for your showering, your drinking, your cooking, your washing, everything that needs to happen. And so again, this component of the pie, if we can address that, then we can solve, maybe not solve, but we can make a lot of progress on a lot of the issues that we're having. So it's not enough anymore to reduce, reuse, and recycle. We're all familiar with that. We have to refuse. We have to stop it from coming into production in the first place. So what I mean by this is, obviously, if you're at the grocery store, try not to buy more food than you can eat in that food's lifespan. Don't buy a supersized thing of lettuce if you think you might have 1 salad a day and it's going to go bad in 5 days. And the other thing is imagine you're going to the Rossmore Diner for lunch, or any other restaurant, pick a restaurant, and you order a sandwich and it comes with fries. And maybe you're not eating fries because you're trying to be healthy. We have to start saying, hold the fries, please. At which point, it's tendency to argue with you a little bit, but it's free. It comes with it. I can't give you a discount if you don't get the fries. It's okay. It's okay. I don't want the fries, because they're not free. They're actually costing us a huge amount of resources. So it's hard to conceptualize the amount of water that goes into food production. And let me start by saying that this is not a campaign to get you to stop eating meat. But for goodness sake, do not waste it. So let's say you're having, a kale salad. This is a 5-gallon water bottle. I think we've all seen these. They're the ones that, you can fill up at the supermarket. So imagine how big that is. It's about this big around. You used to have them in the office buildings and stuff. So to make kale, it would take about half of those. To make avocados, it would take about 2 of those. To make almonds, which are often, a food that is frequently identified as being really water heavy, would take about 5 of those. Chickpeas, that's an outlier. Who knew about chickpeas? But beef takes 106 of these. So that means these 5-gallon bottles, you would need, oh gosh, somebody do the math for me. I believe it's 26 5-gallon bottles to get to that 106 gallons. But here's the kicker. That's per ounce. It's only an ounce. So if you think about a hamburger, a typical hamburger is usually a 1/4 pound, which is 4 ounces, which is that many water bottles. It's 80. 80 of those 5-gallon water bottles is what it takes to make your hamburger. And again, just the beef in your hamburger, mind you. And again, I am not saying to stop eating meat. I'm just saying that please do not throw it away. And if you are going to substitute every once in a while, pork takes about half the amount of water as beef, and turkey and chicken, poultry take about half that still. They're much, much, much lower. So this may feel like a big problem that we have no control over, except that we do. And that's the good news, is that we are the ones wasting the food. Almost half of all the food waste is happening right in our homes, and another third of it is happening in the restaurants, which is again, the consumer, us. So if we are the ones that start to get control of our food waste, the rest of the industry will respond. So now that we've talked about why addressing food waste is so important, I want to give you 3 easy tips to address it. And I have all of these personally, so I speak from experience. So the first one is keep it fresher longer. We've all had the experience where we buy some fresh food, we're really excited to eat it. Maybe we have some nice juicy strawberries that we're looking forward to, and then we open them and they've already started growing mold or they're mushy or whatever. You just can't get to it before it goes bad. Well, there's this thing you can get on Amazon for $12 called Blue Apple. According to the website, it is non-toxic and organic, but I'm not sure I believe that, to be honest. But what it is it absorbs the gases that the fruits and vegetables let off as they decompose, which causes more decomposition. So it's basically an absorption device. And it really does work, and I recommend it highly. The other thing is imagine you're going back out to that restaurant and you're absolutely stuffed because the serving was way too large. And, you don't want to finish it because you feel full, but you don't really want to take it home because maybe it's going to be a pain to carry around, or, you don't want to double down on your food wastage by then asking for all this extra packaging to take it home where it may never get eaten anyway. So there are these collapsible containers and you can carry them around in your purse. And they're nice and small, and you bring it to a restaurant, you pop it up, and then you put all your extra food in there and you take it home. And if you eat it, great. And if you don't, well, you've at least made all the effort that you can. And finally, plan your meals with the ingredients that you already have on hand. So this one's a little confusing because I use it backwards. You'll see that it's a shopping list, but I use it in the other way. I make a list of everything that I have, and then I build meals out of that. So everything that's expiring, I'll make a list of those, and then I'll take them and figure out what needs to be added to those to make those into a meal. And then that's what I go and I shop for. And I find that works really, really well. And again, all 3 of these items together are $35 on Amazon. And they're no pun intended, an extremely low hanging fruit, and there's no reason to not try them out. So, questions and discussion.
Okay, so you can, I would suggest that people put questions or other suggestions in the chat, and so we'll have a record of it, and then at the same time we can hear. Okay, so Dave and Amanda have okay, Dave or Amanda, why don't you mention what you've written there? Just unmute yourself.
I did. Well, I must admit, I was watching a home edit session on Netflix, if you've ever seen that, and it's really about organizing your pantry and fridge and freezer, and we haven't gone that far. But what I've done so far is just put Post-it notes next to every shelf in the fridge and freezer so that I know what is there, so I can really quickly inspect what do we have there. It doesn't really help yet with the produce drawer, so I like the idea of the Blue Apple. But now we have a shelf for Eat Me First, which leftovers or anything else that we find that, hey, let's get it out of that drawer and put it up there. And I think it's starting to help us cut down on, composting. I think, we were composting our waste.
Yeah.
So.
And Rebecca, thanks so much for talking about beef. We know that a quarter-pound burger is about 10 bathtubs. So if you want to have a quarter pounder, just don't take a bath for about, a month and a half. It's about fair. Thank you very much. That's a great presentation.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Dale?
Yeah, I'd never thought of this before, Rebecca, but as you were showing some of the containers that food is in, I remember most grocery stores have a fresh meat counter. And I was thinking to myself, I've never thought of this, but I'm going to change my habits on that. if I want to get a pound of ground beef, for instance, instead of getting it already packaged, I can go to the fresh counter and get it there. I don't know why I've never thought of that, but we could over the course of a year, we could save a lot by being able to do that.
I think they still wrap it, but I think they wrap it in like, waxed paper, which is inevitably better than plastic, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Adrian or Carol, you have a comment? You can unmute yourself.
Unmute us. I put this in the chat, but I read it on one of those, I think it's from Costa County. There's a chef that does stems and tips or something like that. Anyway, one of her suggestions was with your folding containers, if you have your leftovers, like if you have a chicken breast and French fries, if you have them put in separate containers, you're more likely to reheat them. You're more likely to redo something with them because they're not so yucky. If you just have them all piled in one thing, then, you open it up and it's like, and then it ends up in the compost bin.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
that makes sense.
Carol Weed, you had a factoid to share? Let's see,
I'm sorry, I put something in the chat and I have another
Right.
program going, so I'll
Okay,
let
sorry.
somebody read it.
I can read it. The average American throws out an average of $400 worth of food a year. Mary Ann Clark, can you unmute yourself and share your thought?
I've been really impressed with Berkeley Bowl's use of compostable bags when packing groceries. And I've talked to some markets around here to see if they could start using them instead of plastic. But so far I haven't really gotten anywhere on that.
Okay. Thank you. Eric Cox has a question. Is restaurant waste higher than supermarket waste? And Rebecca, you want to take that since I think your slide addressed that?
So yeah, the restaurant waste it shows on that graph is 33% and home use is 44%. Was that the question, Eric?
Yeah, it was. That was kind of astounding figures. I was thinking that we all know that the stores waste a lot, absolutely. And I was just going to mention there is a program here in Contra Costa County that is devoted entirely to rescuing food from all the major food outlets, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Safeway, and all the rest of them. And they delivered over 17 million pounds of food last year, which is over 12 million meals. And I want to congratulate. It's called White Pony Express, and they're one of the most really do the good job business here in Contra Costa County. I can post their information. They're always looking for volunteers. They're on the road 7 days a week. They have a fleet of refrigerated trucks, started in the back of somebody's trunk in 2013 with $800, and now they have a fleet of trucks, volunteers, and they're moving millions of pounds of food. So that's a frightening statistics that the restaurants are actually throwing away more than we can rescue from the stores. And then you said 44% from our homes. Boy, it's a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Richard McPherson, you have a comment here. Would you care to share it?
Where did he just go?
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Yes.
Well, I just made a comment there that I don't keep anything fresh. So when I buy all fruits and vegetables, I chop up what I need and put everything else in freezer bags. So my freezer is packed with all sorts of frozen, mostly vegetables, and I just take out what I need and cook with it. So I never throw anything away. I'm stunned that so much fresh food is thrown out. I had no idea.
Oh, that's
So
great.
thank you, Rebecca, for bringing this to our attention.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. Dave and Amanda, you have electronically. Why don't you unmute yourself?
Hi, thanks, Richard. I just finished the Good Life program that was hosted by UC Davis and the Fitness Center. And one of the things they taught in the Good Life program, it's got physical exercise and cooking, is you save everything in the freezer left over and you make your own vegetable broth at the end to try to save, recycle. So we're trying that, but it's you save all the vegetable leftovers that you used to put in compost, and every so often you make some vegetable broth out of it.
I think
Okay.
Barbara had a question. She's had her hand up for a while. Barbara
Yeah.
Bigelow.
Go
Thank you.
ahead.
A couple of things. First of all, good news is that several of the restaurants that I've been going to now have not waxed take-home containers. They're just cardboard, which can be put in the recycle. Also, Trader Joe's has wonderful compostable bags all through their, and I use those for my compost.
Yeah.
So they work out great along with newspaper. And I wanted to say that all the vegetables that look like they might be going out are fabulous for soup. None of us get enough vegetables, so I make soup all year long. So it's really an important thing to think about. But most important, Rebecca, your presentation was marvelous. And I think that people have no idea what they waste. Is it possible to get like a little flip sheet or whatever of some of those diagrams that you had so I could carry it with me in my purse to talk to people about it? Because I think those graphs are excellent, and especially like the picture of all that water for beef, or talk about how many bathtub fulls. That's visual. People really get that. Otherwise, statistics, they don't. Their eyes fuzz over and they don't get it.
Yeah.
But I think they were excellent, and it's shocking. The statistics are shocking, and I don't think people really know about how much we waste.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome to have anybody here. You're welcome to have the entire presentation.
Great.
There's also a lot of companies that are doing really good work in bringing this to everybody's attention. One called Stop Waste, which is based out of Oakland, I believe, has an entire workbook of how to engage people in this issue. So I can also share all those links, and there's all kinds of infographics and stuff to sort of dig through. And so if you find that one of those is more helpful or does a better job of, making imagery that actually conveys how much water we're talking about, then, it's out there. It's definitely out there. There's also an organization, which they're obviously not doing it now because of COVID, but it used to be sort of a food free cycle where you could say, I only used a half an onion for this pasta I was cooking. Who wants the other half of the onion? And anybody who within a mile radius or whatever it is could come and get it. I don't know how viable that is, especially now in a post-COVID world, but people are trying to make a real difference. And I think that it will help eventually.
Thank you.
Rebecca, if you will send your slides to me or some of the people there, I'll be sending out a link for any of the members to be able to click on it and get a copy of it.
Thank you.
Sure. Carol Reed writes, the SR Reducing Food Waste Committee is developing a resource of tips and programs for our website and the Rossmore News. And Eric Cox put in the chat links to White Pony Express if you have items to be picked up, food rescue.
Actually, Barry,
yes,
that
Eric?
wasn't
Go ahead.
that wasn't for donating food. They actually are always looking for volunteers who might want to help sort food in their warehouse or drive trucks. But it's not so much for donating yourself.
Okay.
But just
Okay.
thank
Very
you.
good. Donating, right. Okay, thanks for the clarification, Eric. Carol Weed also writes cardboard food containers go in compost. And Dave and Amanda just has a question, I guess, either to Rebecca or to the group. How can we encourage others to reduce their food waste? Question mark.
Question.
Hey, Barry, can I answer that a little
Go
bit?
ahead. Sure.
I think that it's both by listening to Rebecca's talk about the amount of water that is wasted, and it's also going to be the fact that because water is so short, that farmers are already starting to sacrifice low value, high water consumptive crops. For example, I think a week ago, Sunday, on the front page of the Contra Costa Times, an article about a farmer down in the Central Valley who had 70 acres that he farmed, and it has been for 40 some years. And he had just made the hard decision to disc under, I think, 5 acres of organic asparagus because it was so water intensive and sold for so little. And so I think if we don't take Rebecca's advice and make better and wiser use of our water, we're going to continue to lose some of the foods that we've always had and have always loved because they won't be economical water-wise to grow.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I read somewhere that the farmer's supply of water has been cut by a huge amount this year. What I read is 95%. I don't know how that's even possible, but they've had massive cuts to their water. And so, as Brad mentioned, they've been pulling up trees. And I think the sad truth in all this is that food is going to have to become much more expensive because it's going to be so much more expensive to grow it in the first place because water is so scarce. So I think that's where we're headed with this, and sort of very similar to what's happened with our water bills. You can't really compel people who don't care to care about conserving water, but when you make something more expensive, suddenly everybody cares. And I think that it's going to be very similar with food.
I agree. Oh, Barry, you're muted.
Marcia McLean writes that that she uses Blue Apple and it works very well. Any other? I think we have time for one more question. Brad, do you see anybody's hand raised? Oh, Alice King. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Alice.
I'm just wondering about the Blue Apple. I'm definitely going to buy one, but you can only use it in the refrigerator. It wouldn't do any good sitting out on a bowl that you have bananas in outside the refrigerator. Am I correct?
I don't know. That's a good question. If it's close enough to the bananas, it might work, but I actually put my bananas in the refrigerator now. I find that it does not harm them. The skin will turn brown, but the insides stay riper for much longer.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Barbara, well, actually, let me read. Dave and Amanda said he comments that about 70% of the total land dedicated to agriculture is for livestock. And he also mentions that they freeze bananas and make banana ice cream. Okay, Barbara Bigelow, you wanted to say something?
Where do you use the Blue Apple? In your hydrator, of the refrigerator part, or anywhere?
I use it in both containers. I use it in my fruit and my vegetable container.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I
think you probably could use it anywhere, but
I'll get it for all my children.
yeah. It really does work. It's so cool to come back to your strawberries 5 days later and be like, oh, they're still edible.
Wow.
Amazing, because they go so quickly.
They really do, yeah.
Yeah.
Not at the rate I eat strawberries.
Let's see.
Paul, I think Paul.
Okay, I'm sorry, Paul, unmute yourself. I muted you. I didn't know you were going to.
I only had one comment, and I think we need to stop apologizing when we mention how much water meat takes to produce, especially beef. A lot of people aren't going to like that message, but it's I'd rather give up beef and live, and it's coming to that.
Yeah, it's one of those tricky subjects where, you can alienate a lot of people and cause them to sort of shut down. So, if you could at least start by, if you're going to enjoy your beef, but don't throw it away. And yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that was a good message, right?
yeah, what I do at home is, I discovered that I actually really like turkey burgers and sometimes even veggie burgers just as much as beef. But the other thing is I don't buy my dog food that's made of beef anymore. That seems like a waste of a beef product. I think he'll be just as fine with turkey or chicken or whatever other kind of dog food he's going to get.
It's true.
Okay, Dave Epley, you had a comment? Unmute yourself. Yeah.
You're still muted, David.
I was using the old press down on the space bar trick, but it didn't seem to work. The one thing I would comment about the blue apple, it absorbs ethylene, and ethylene is essentially a hormone type thing for fruits to increase their ripening. So that all makes sense, but bear in mind that an awful lot of your veg and fruit are picked green with the assumption that
Point.
they're going to be sitting around and ripen, at least part of the ripening process will be in your home. So if you use that blue apple judiciously, you'll protect fast ripening things like strawberries, and those green bananas you pick up or whatever will need a few days. In fact, I sometimes put them into a plastic bag to keep the ethylene around long enough for them to start ripening, and then pull them out. So it's not a universal solution to rotten fruit.
When you really start digging, you'll find that there are all kinds of tips and tricks where people say, don't put, I think this is accurate, don't put any other fruit with your bananas, because for whatever reason, bananas in proximity to other fruit cause them to ripen quickly. And I think there's something similar with tomatoes. But yeah, there are a ton of, tips and tricks about how to make something ripen, how to stop something from ripening, how to preserve this, how to, all that stuff.
Yeah, actually, bananas are the anti-blue apple.
Yeah.
And if you've got some tomatoes and you want them to ripen in a hurry because you need them in a couple of days for a salad or something, stick a banana into a plastic bag with your tomatoes, and that'll speed up their ripening.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, David, thank you. Next, Joy Danzig and then Dale Harrington. Joy, you want to unmute and share your comment?
I put it into the chat. I just say that when berries are past their immediate prime, I bag them and freeze them, and then they're wonderful in smoothies. And I do the same with bananas.
Yeah.
And you can buy them already frozen in the market, but then if you want fresh, you have to defrost them. So I do it the reverse way.
Yeah.
So I always have them in the freezer for smoothies.
That's good.
Great. Thank you, Joy.
Sure.
Dale?
Yeah, I put bananas in the refrigerator to slow down the ripening process. And if I know that I want to use or eat a banana tomorrow, I take one out today so that it's, so that it's room temperature or whatever, and then do it that way. I also read a long time ago that if you break the bananas off of their attached, whatever you would call that, that it slows the ripening process.
Oh, really?
That they ripen more quickly if you keep them all clustered together.
Well, that makes sense.
Interesting. Somebody asked for tips for cilantro and parsley. For all herbs that I've found, if you put them in a glass of water in your refrigerator, they'll stay, fresher longer. And then I've also known people who will wrap them in a cold paper towel and put them in the fridge that way, and they stay longer. But also one thing that I have that I love for those of you that are cooks, that I talked about in another presentation, there's something called an arrow garden that lives right on your countertop. It's about $100 on Amazon, and it's this fully self-contained herb growing system. So it's got water in there. It has its own light. You can grow lettuce, you can grow mint, you can grow basil. We love the basil, all kinds of different basils. And then it's always there fresh for you on your counter. It grows so much that we can't use it all. So I don't know if I'm really contributing to food waste or preventing it. But if any of you really do enjoy cooking a lot and you like to use a lot of fresh herbs, I cannot recommend this highly enough. It's been so much fun. And it's all very, very easy and self-sufficient.
How do you spell that?
AERO and then garden.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Gloria, why don't you end this part of the evening with
It
your
was
question?
actually a comment about parsley and cilantro. The old ice cube trays that we used to have in the old days, those plastic ones you see maybe at thrift stores, you can chop your cilantro, your parsley, or any herb, basically, put them in there, put water over them, freeze them as ice cubes, and then take the ice cubes out and store them in an airtight container. And whenever you need parsley or cilantro for soup, you just throw in a couple ice cubes and they'll last for maybe 6 months in the freezer. And also, same thing with basil or anything you want to make out of pesto. You can make parsley into pesto, basil. So make your pesto, put them in those ice cube trays, freeze them, and it's 1 cube of pesto per person. Grab a box of pasta out of the cupboard and there you go, you have a meal. Maybe if you have Parmesan cheese in the fridge.
Very cool.
Okay, and I think what we'll do, Joy, is it real quick?
Just quick, I bought a package of these cotton mesh bags. So I don't use the plastic bags in the supermarket and I store them. They have a tear weight on there. So if it's by the pound, they can deduct the weight of the bag.
Oh, nice.
It's like so. I got about, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them. And I store them in the bins and they keep the parsley, the veggies fresh a little longer because they have air, you know, it's like a mesh. That's it.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Joy.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, thank you very, very much for opening our eyes. And maybe Barbara, we can get the Food Waste Committee to start putting together a compendium of the best tips and tricks that.
Glad you're a little soft. If you could speak up a little.
No, I can't.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Actually, that's exactly what the committee is working on right now.
That's what I thought. Thanks. Right answer.
Thank you.
Okay.
We wanted to wait for Rebecca's great tips and then we'll pass them on.
I think you're going to need to pay royalties.
They're totally free.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys again so much for having me. And I'm so glad you formed a food waste committee and I'm so glad that you're doing everything you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
Okay, let me share my screen with you, see if I can get back to that. There it is. Okay. So Barry, upping our game.
So this past, in mid-May, we had a presentation, a special presentation from Peter Fikowski, who is the founder of the Foundation for Climate Restoration. And he had some very insightful things, which, but I'm afraid that he might have assumed that we knew more of this topic than we did, because I don't know if he really gave just the essence of what his point was. So I wanted to just spend about 5 minutes here to explain or to summarize what he said there. And he did present this this slide showing what the CO2 levels were for the past approximately million years. And he showed that nature has actually reduced CO2 levels by 100 to 150 parts per million 10 times during that time. And so he contends, and I think there's a lot of data to support this. He synthesized a lot of information from a lot of areas, that it is feasible to bring down the climate, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere to 300 part per million levels, doing what nature does. He talks about two what he calls silver bullets to reduce CO2. It turns out that over 99% of all carbon is in the form of limestone on the earth. And that is major way in which nature sequesters CO2. And then the other way is by creating a lot of by having like kelp and other organisms, plant and animal life in the sea that grows and then sinks down into the ocean. And that is the other way that he mentions. He mentioned that synthetic limestone, and there's a company that is doing that, and there will be more, as a way of generating limestone from the air. And this is particularly helpful in areas that are not close to quarries. And he presents in a white paper. He discusses these in some detail. And I wanted to make an offer here. Let me just go to the next, if you can go to the next slide, Brad, that we can, thank you. So, right, restoring with carbon negative building materials, ocean fertilization, and another thing that's done in the ocean, permaculture arrays. I wanted to make an offer if there is interest in creating a session to study his white paper, Foundation for Climate Restoration. So when you get a copy of the slides, you can click on the link for the white paper there. And I will send out, along with the link to the slides, there'll be a place you can click on if you have an interest in doing that. And we'll set up a time, or I'll schedule a time that we'll have a review of that paper, and we'll have some discussion about it. So that's all. That's what I wanted to mention about Peter Fikowski and his very worthwhile ideas about combating climate change. Any questions before we go on to the next part?
No, but I've got a quick comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can sign me up to be on as part of that study group.
Okay, very good.
Okay, should we move on?
I think so.
Oh, guess what's up next? Me. And so one of the things that, I think that if you've been attending Sustainable Rossmore meetings for a while, you know that one of my, if not my number one objective is to figure out what are the most effective things that we can do to combat climate crisis. And I'm fortunate with Barry's help and others, I'm always asking, what's the best way to do that? And as we know, Sustainable Rossmore historically has been focused much more on persuading people that it's an issue and to take actions to help mitigate it. I've recently come to realize that I think, yes, that is important, but I think the more effective method, especially given the fact that we're quickly running out of time, is also to do, legislative persuasion, legislative actions. And so I've got a couple examples why I think that's important for SR to develop the capability to get involved in. The two examples are, one bill that's currently trying to work its way through the California Assembly Bill 1139, which is on net energy metering, which it deals with the pricing on solar power generated and the credits that owners of solar panels have. And the next bill is SB, which is Senate Bill 596, which fortunately did pass the Senate, will now go to the House, is on getting the California Air Resources Board to set greenhouse gas reduction limits and targets, especially for concrete and cement production. And especially both of those I think are highly important, especially in light of what we just learned from Peter Fikowski and his talk. AB 1139 is especially important because the consensus in the environmental community is if that passes the Assembly and then goes to the Senate and is passed by the Senate and signed by Governor Newsom, it will have a devastating impact on California rooftop solar. And what we need in order to combat.
Brad, Adrian mentioned in the chat that that AB 1139 did not proceed today, so it is probably dead.
Yay! Good. I hadn't seen that yet. Yeah, so that's great news. But unfortunately, I'm still going to use that as an example because periodically things like that pop up, as Carol Weed will attest. That if we don't take considered action on them, then the impacts of if they do pass can be extremely detrimental. And again, I know Carol's done a heck of a lot of work in that area, not so much through Sustainable Rossmore. And so one of the things I would like to do is see if Sustainable Rossmore can and is willing to put together some processes or infrastructure so that we can play in that area and be effective in that area also. And if the answer is yes, then we've got options as to how to do that. So what I want to do is I want to open it up to the floor for a couple minutes and just get people's ideas. What do they think? Is that something that you think we ought to do? Is this something that you're willing to work on? Again, we're not asking for a commitment right now. I'm just trying to get a feeling for, is this something that it's worth our time to pursue and drive?
Are we unmuted here?
I think you are, Eric.
Why don't you stop the share so we can see people?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I was just going to add that I myself, the bit that I've been able to participate legislatively and on bills and so forth, I really do feel like Brad is saying, it's things move when large amounts of people move and make their voices known. Brad sort of got me involved before the election with MoveOn.org and for the presidential campaign. And, I think it's the thousands and millions of people that were really putting energy into that campaign and on all the fringes and all the minority groups and all the, there was a huge amount of effort Brad, you must have been working 18 hours a day at the computer. But I mean, you know, Biden won. But Woody, if people weren't putting the energy forward, and you know, I'll throw my hat in with this, Brad, if there's a way that I can, you know, help work on the campaign, legislative campaigns.
Yes, great. Thanks, Eric. And yes, there is. As I said, there was a number of options. Marcia just put in the chat line. You know, why not just be part of Bay Area 350, you know, Bay Area or 350 Contra Costa, both of which have very robust and very talented and very passionate legislative action, you know, teams, of which Carol is a member of both of those. And I'm a member of the 350, you know, Contra Costa legislative action team, but you know, not as much as Carol. And so that is one of the options, is to, you know, to when we have SR members identify themselves as being interested in working in that area, we can plug them into one of those two teams. And so again, I'm not necessarily proposing that we fire up our own team, but it might have certain advantages, you know, to, you know, or you can do what Carol does. Carol and I do is, you know, it's semi all the above. You know, Carol's a member of, you know, of two of them now, and she does some of it through SR. So, but I think that the first step is just identify, you know, a handful of people that are willing to get active and actually work in this area, especially when it's time critical. And some of these things are time critical. And Barry, just in case, you know, you hadn't seen, anybody haven't seen, is, you know, Carol modified what Adrian said about AB 1139 on the solar. She said it was, quote, passed and retained for today to be acted on tomorrow or anytime through Friday. So it sounds like it's not necessarily dead yet. Obviously, we're continuing to kill it, you know, but it's going to take some, you know, some more work.
I think Alice King, you had.
Yes, this isn't legislation on a state or county level, but I'm just very concerned and pretty upset when I learned that I missed my Mutual One meeting last Friday, but that John Moe's motion to go ahead with the solar initiative, you know, prep and all the things you'd need to do to figure out if it is viable, didn't even get a second in the meeting. And I'm in Mutual One and I have an electric car, and I was just so excited after listening to the presentation, I think earlier in May. And
Alice, Adrian will be updating the group on that. So why don't you hold off on that? Thank you. Okay, and Dale also had a comment.
Yeah, I was in order to educate all of us, I was thinking it might be a good idea for us to learn from our assembly and state representatives in California and our congressional and Senate representatives in Washington, what they would like to have presented to them for introducing a bill. Now, they may not have the time to appear to us like Rebecca did, but maybe we could reach out and ask them to provide something in writing to us that would help them to be able to support us.
And Dale, and I think it's also critical for us to reach out to them, especially, you know, those people who we truly believe are effective environmental stewards. And, you know, like DeSaulnier, our congressman, a US congressman, Rebecca Bauer Cahan, our California Assembly member, and ask them what can we as a club and as a community do to help them.
Yeah, Rebecca commented recently that it really is helpful to receive a communications from the voters.
Yes, well, yeah, but what she mentioned, when you may have heard other elected officials say, especially at the the state and national level, is if on a particular bill or an issue, if they get 50 to 100 calls on that one bill, that's a lot. That gets their attention. You stop and think about it. We've got 10,000 people here, right? I mean, we've got over 100 members. We should, on a key bill, we should be able to generate 100 phone calls ourselves. So okay, I promise at least in the next 10 seconds I will get off my soapbox for a minute.
Okay,
So
Carol, you wanted to make a comment?
she does.
Yeah, I was just gonna say a couple of loose ends. When we put out a request for SR members to call a legislator, those need to be acted on quickly. So this is exactly what Brad is talking about, is to not think about it for a week and then do it. We need strong, quick action, and we don't ask for very many of those. We edit them out rather strictly so that you're not asked very often to do that. But if 1139 does get out of the assembly, then we'll be putting a pressure on Senator Glazer. So that probably will happen because it's expected to pass out of the assembly. So I'd like to be optimistic, but I'm not from everything I've heard. In any case, I totally agree. By the way, Marcia is also on the legislative team with 350, and they do great training sessions. They guide you through the whole process. You can do any piece of it you want to. You can, do an hour a week or 10 hours a week. So I really think that anybody who thinks they might be interested should come and check it out and think about it. Right now we're in the middle of a legislative term, so it's going to be actually in about there's a recess coming up in June. So now would be a good time to express your interest, or in January, because those are the two times that they do trainings and fold in new people. And as far as suggestions, I want to remind people who maybe weren't in Rossmore at the time, but the whole concept of AB 634 back in 2017 was a bill that Sustainable Rossmore brought to our legislator. In fact, we brought it to our legislator and our senator and a whole bunch of other people. And finally, Brett Barnhart and Jennifer Mew figured out, found another person to carry the bill, who was Eggman. But in any case, we have initiated a bill already. They did most of the writing of the bill, but we went and lobbied for it and showed up and made calls and all that. So we have a history as a club of being active. So I have some thoughts about a bill that needs to happen that we can talk about later. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Brad, I wanted to make a comment if I can on this.
Go ahead, Barry, and then I think we'll go on to the next agenda
Okay.
item.
Well, I want you to know, Brad, that I think you have a receptive audience here, because the recent mailing where we asked the membership to please make one call now, that had the largest percent, 73% of the mailing list of about 500 opened that mail.
Yay.
Which is typically it's a little over half, but that was by far a lot. And then we don't know what percent actually made the calls, but it definitely got a lot of people's attention. So thank you everyone who opened that
Yes.
that email.
And as a result, the reward you get for that behavior is more of the same. We can do this more frequently, I suspect. Okay. Then let's move on. Okay. We're not going to talk much about vote climate now. It'll wait till next month. Adriana, you want to give us some updates on your Rossmore Solar Initiative?
Hello, everybody. The Sustainable Rossmore's Solar and Storage Committee has been working together with solar committees from First Mutual, Third Mutual, and somewhat less formal groups from Mutual 8, 50, and 70. We, as probably most of you know by now, we created this thing called the Rossmore Solar Initiative, suggesting that, mutual-wide solar, so the whole mutual puts in solar at one time, and then adds on microgrids, batteries, and resilience as a later step, probably a year or so down the pike when the economics of that become more favorable. We put together a website, which is rsi-now.org, and you can see all the information there. Everything that we've produced pretty much is up there now. It's still under construction in many ways, and but we're trying to use that as a way of communicating with everybody exactly what's going on. So we have, as part of the whole thing, I think I mentioned this the last time, we have established a relationship with a developer, a company that puts these kinds of things together. This company is called Table Rock, and they put together an engagement letter for us that says they will pay for half of the feasibility study that's needed as the next step. And the board of First Mutual or Third Mutual would pay half of it if it turns out not to be feasible. If it does turn out to be feasible, then there's no cost. The cost gets rolled into the eventual installation. We took that proposal to First Mutual, to their board. They actually had a special meeting in the middle of the month, last month, to consider it. And then it came up for a final vote on last Friday, the 28th. And as Alice mentioned, it failed for lack of a second, which was very, very disappointing. I'm not sure quite what will be our next step there. Third Mutual, however, is making a decision tomorrow. They called a special board meeting to make this decision, and that's happening at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And if you live in Mutual 3, I beg of you, please either reach out to your director right now, don't wait, and send him an email or send her an email saying that you support this, or, and even better perhaps, there will be a resident forum. Speak at the resident forum, because that's more in your face. If you go to the Rossmore Mutuals, Third Mutual, you can find the agenda of the meeting there and the link to it. All of that is there. So I'm reasonably hopeful that Third Mutual will go ahead. I think we have 4 votes. We need 5. And so we're going to keep our fingers crossed. If Mutual 3 goes ahead, then I think we've got a project. And maybe we can go back to Mutual 1 and get them to come on board. If Mutual 3 does not proceed, then I'm not sure what's going to happen, quite frankly. But it may be that we just can't get enough folks to do it. So that would be very disappointing, but that would be, it is what it is. So, like I said, reach out to your directors if you're in Mutual 3, or come and speak at the resident forum tomorrow, please. And if there's any questions, happy to answer.
I've got a quick question, Adrian. Do you think it would still be worthwhile for people who live in Mutual 1 to talk to their directors and tell them that you support the Rossmore Solar Initiative? And
I think it can't hurt. I
would think not.
It'd be a very good thing to do for you to reach out to your director and say you thought it was a very short-sighted decision, and that it's going to cost the residents money. They could have saved money by doing this, and now it's going to cost them more money. And so in that sense, it's a very, very short-sighted opinion. However, that's, that alone by itself, I don't think is going to change things. I think what's going to perhaps be, if Third Mutual moves ahead and then they start realizing more acutely that, oh, okay, we're actually missing out here. Maybe in another 3 or 4 weeks, we can go back and try and resurrect it with First Mutual.
I think in the meantime, people have called.
Well, I know some people did call. I mean, there was a fair amount of support from the residents of First Mutual, but there was just so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt raised by Paul Donner from MOD that it just completely derailed it.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Adrian on this? Suggestions?
What are the fears that people had about it?
Well, it was all happening too quickly. Yeah, well, this was just being done by members of a club, Sustainable Rossmore, not real professionals. And of course, what was ignored in that statement is that the members of the club, besides being professionals themselves in many cases, what we reached to the point of doing was we say, okay, we need to do this feasibility study. We need to bring in, quote, the real professionals. And not only that, we found the premier firm in the Bay Area, and we've got somebody else to pay half of the cost. What part of this don't you like?
Or all of the cost.
Or all of the cost, yes.
So this is really just studying feasibility with this group to go up and move forward?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'll call Judy out tomorrow and tell her.
Adrian, if the problem people have is with the specifics of the proposed contract, how can we get people to how can we get the contract, the proposed engagement agreement sort of changed, modified? I mean, when I read through the engagement agreement, what it looked like was not that we were getting something for half the price, but that Table Rock was getting something for half the price, quarter of the price. They were getting their proprietary marketing materials, data, analysis, and we couldn't even use it. The confidentiality clauses says we can't even show it to the members. It's a secret plan.
No, that I don't think that's correct.
So let me read you page. Okay, let me read you page 7. It says Table Rock will not be acting as an advisor, agent, or fiduciary. They're all in it for themselves. That's one. Look at the bottom of page 7. if you look at page 4, it says the mutual cannot disclose, publish, or furnish the feasibility report or any portion, finding, conclusion, or other aspect in any manner except to, and then they list specific people. So that, for example, Mutual One, the shareholders of Mutual One couldn't see this report. And if we were to disclose it to them, we might be liable for 150% of the costs.
I'm
I mean,
I
we
can't,
can put
I'm
in the
not in a
contract.
position to really, who's talking, by the way? I can't see you.
So I'm just saying that if,
Can I ask
if people
who's
have
talking?
problems with the specific contract, how do we get the
This
specific
is
contract in better shape?
Jack Appleman.
Oh,
is
okay,
talking.
Jack.
How do we get the specific contract in shape? I mean, the vision of RSI is great.
Okay.
The question is, this implementation vehicle to get to Sage Energy seems to have some flaws at the moment. How do we fix those flaws so that directors aren't facing sort of real liability issues?
Okay, well, well, first of all, that was never discussed in the meeting. It never got to that level of discussion. And so, so it's kind of hard to sort of address that in a way. And I think I finally found the actual document. Page 7. Sorry, which page were you saying this was at?
So the inability to disclose this stuff is on page 4 at the bottom. And the idea that they refuse to fulfill any of the fiduciary obligations that we have to have when we sign a contract is on the bottom of page 7. I mean, that's just 2 of many flaws in this document that if I were a director, I would have great difficulty signing this.
Okay, well,
so I guess the question
okay.
is,
I mean, I guess I read that through and thought, well, this is, I don't know, this seemed like sort of standard commercial language in, you know, and then hundreds and thousands of contracts I've seen in my life. It didn't stand out as being particularly unusual. And don't forget, that would only apply if we didn't go forward.
Right, but I mean, the point is we would have no way of using this feasibility study. We couldn't give it to other people and say, do you have better terms for us?
Well, yes, because they're paying half of it.
Exactly.
So why would they do that? I mean,
Can I interrupt, guys?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a good use of our time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And Jack, we'll find out tomorrow if the Mutual 3 board has any qualms about it, because they've gotten a copy of the engagement letter and both, their lawyers read it. So. Okay.
No, I mean, look, I hope nobody has any qualms about it, but it seems really difficult to get around this quote unquote standard language.
Okay, and Carol, do you have a comment?
More question. Adrian, when you have had any of the meetings so far, Table Rock has the 2 Table Rock CEO leaders have not been with you. Is that accurate?
On the first Mutual One, no, they were not there. They are.
Okay, but they will be tomorrow?
They will be tomorrow, along with Sage Energy.
Right. And have you had a meeting, or they and you had a meeting with Paul Donner?
I have had a meeting with Paul Donner.
You did?
First Mutual thing, yes.
Okay, because I think he has the ability to squash anything in the valley, and his power with directors who are volunteers and many of whom don't have much experience in business or certainly in energy, are afraid to do anything that he says not to do. And that was the case with other issues that we finally made progress on over several years. So he needs to be part of the team and needs to, be brought on board. And I would encourage you to have an attorney at the meeting so that these kind of questions don't slow you down, because you've got to move fast now.
Mhm.
When I say you to have an attorney, encourage Mutual 3 to have their attorney be present is what I meant to say.
I don't know whether they've invited them or not. At this point, it's probably too late. So
Okay.
we'll see. But the directors of Mutual 3 are very aware of what happened at First Mutual and are prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, if I could say a few words. Paul Donner came out of the woods he didn't reach out to us. Adrian did reach out to him on multiple occasions since January. He didn't say that he wanted to be informed. He did not attend any of the meetings. And then he waited for he waited for Brad to present, he waited for Adrian to present, he waited for me to present. And then he went through a bit of a litany of all of the things that could go wrong. And as I said in a memo back to him and Tim O'Keefe, there wasn't one issue that Donna brought up that had not already been discussed and anticipated by the committee. That's number one. And number two, he could have done it in a completely different way. He could, if he had any concerns about the process that all of our committees, because we have a joint committee here of Mutual 1, Mutual 3, Mutual 70, Mutual 50, Mutual 2 has even been participating. There's a representative there from them. If he had probed, if he had asked his questions and he had said, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you talked to your attorney? Can you do this without a referendum? And probed it in such a way as to give the board some indication that, okay, they've been checking all the boxes. They've been doing their homework. I can understand why they want to go ahead with a feasibility study. But the attitude that he took was one that was, as Adrian said, you guys don't know what you're doing. You're rushing this too fast. And we just need to put a stop to it. And it was very cursory. It was hardly professional. And I was very disappointed and upset.
And Paul, you weren't the only one. I mean, and actually my opinion was even lower than that.
Brad,
Yes.
it's Marcia. The very first thing that he said was, you really shouldn't take the rules or the information from a single club.
Right.
We have to remember that as well. So.
And we weren't a club. We were a duly organized committee of First Mutual. And there were representatives there of a duly organized committee of Third Mutual. You know, that was another one of his kind of false statements. Assumptive statements.
Assumptions.
Brad, it sounds like it might be helpful to have a in a separate meeting on this to discuss
Yes, please.
some next steps.
Yep, especially after the third mutual meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Could I just interject an idea here that if I know 3 people in Mutual 3, so when this is over, I'm going to call them. I mean, we have, the meeting is tomorrow at 10. Is the public forum before the vote? And shouldn't we notify anybody in Mutual 3 that we know to reach out to their director and speak at the forum?
Yeah, so the forum, the meeting follows the standard form for all mutual meetings, where the very first action item is the residents forum, where residents may speak on up to 3 minutes on anything that they have in mind. Then the meeting goes to consider this particular question. There will be a presentation by Gil Peterson, who's the chair of the duly constituted Third Mutuals Solar Committee. There will be then some discussion by Brad, by the people from Table Rock, the people from Sage, and myself. There will then be, the board will then ask questions and whatnot, and then they will go into executive session to discuss the final meeting, the final vote.
This is Dale. I have a mandatory GRF committee meeting at 10 o'clock tomorrow, so I won't be able to attend the Mutual 3 meeting, and I'm in Mutual 3. But it would seem to me that it could be helpful if people who have solar now in Mutual 3 could briefly just comment on the benefit that they have received by having solar.
Yeah.
I know that if I were able to be there, that I would say that.
Yeah, well, it would be helpful, Dale, like, for example, if you would send a note to John Swearingen, because he's a kind of a cipher for me right now, and just comment what you just commented, that, you know, and that's the whole point of what we're trying to do here, is everybody who's put solar in realizes it's a huge benefit. It's a huge cost saver, and it has all these environmental benefits as well, but it's a huge cost saver. And everybody realizes that. And what we're trying to do is find a way to enable everybody across the mutual to enjoy those benefits.
Okay, let's move on. See if we can do it semi quickly.
Thank you,
Barbara.
Adrian.
Yes, thank you very much, Adrian.
Yep.
And we're gonna have more fun tomorrow.
I hope so.
Yeah. And Barbara, did you have anything else you wanted to add to food waste tonight?
I think we've said it. We're just working hard on getting all this wonderful information out the best way, the most efficient way. So that's what we're working on.
Good, thanks. Okay, and Dave, you're on. Mr. Casey, are you there and unmuted?
No, we're going to postpone, Brad, till next month.
Okay.
Happy, it was very important to talk about the mutuals, microgrid, so we'll just put it off till next time.
Sounds good. That takes us through there. And Carol, do you want to talk about maggots?
Yes, so appetizing. Glad we all finished dinner. The yuck factor. This is the time of year that maggots, if you don't have them yet, you want to prevent them. If you do already have them, then vinegar spray works, sort of. But these are the simple ways. That picture shows 3 different people who wrapped their food scraps correctly. One is in a brown paper bag, and it could be any color paper bag. One is wrapped in newspaper, and one is wrapped in a BPI certified compostable bag. So the picture says 1,000 words. And up at the top there, that scrunched up piece of newspaper, doesn't have anything in it. It's just an example of, and this was not a staged picture. I just came across it and took it. It's great to put in warm weather, things that are in there very long start decomposing before pickup day. So one advantage is to keep things at home to the last possible moment if you can, but another is to keep adding things in there that will absorb moisture. So newspaper does it, leaves, pizza boxes, you know, all those compostable things that tend to be on the dry side, to-go boxes that aren't shiny, the ones that Barbara Bigelow described that are like cardboard are great because they'll absorb moisture. So, and lastly, hang a fly trap. If you have an enclosure that has had maggots in the past, those cylindrical yellow ones that we see all over the place work. So that's the other thing. Next slide. Okay. This has to be discussed tonight because it's exciting and it's new, and by next meeting we already will have passed the first rollout. There's a Green Sofa Cinema series. You have to appreciate the alliteration because that is the weirdest name, but if you appreciate that it's Sofa Cinema series, to indicate that you watch the movie at home, but then you can discuss it. And this is a new thing we're rolling out. It's a collaboration with several groups in the county. You can tell your friends in Pennsylvania to tune into it, so it's not limited to Contra Costa. That bit.ly link that's at the bottom will be available in the slides that Barry will share, but it's also in the Rossmore News last week in the film section. It has a write-up about it, and it'll be there tomorrow and the next Wednesday. So if you check out the film section. Next page. There. So Patty Harrington has been good enough to be our first discussant. So she'll, after we have each watched the film at home, a 1-hour documentary called Plastic Wars. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can use a more elaborate link that's also in the newspaper article to get to the 1-hour program and watch it at home. And then join the YouTube by making a reservation, join the Zoom discussion by using that bit.ly link. So any questions? Patty, do you want to add anything? I saw her on earlier.
And Dave, you got
Yeah, no, I'm here, but no, y'all come. It's going to be interesting and short and sweet and concise. So it's going to be micro rather than macro, but it's practical and useful stuff.
great. Thank you very much for doing this, Patty.
You're welcome.
David, Amanda, did you have a question? Okay. Then let's move on. Richard, are you ready?
I'm ready, yes. I am on. So, hi. All right, so the Sustainable Landscape Committee. Okay, so, all right, so the focus in Rossmore, as it relates to the drought crisis, which, here we are again. So there's the drought crisis in Rossmore means 2 areas of action. So there's the immediate, and then there's the long term. So our committee is more long term. I'm not ready. Thank you. So the immediate is what MOD does. So these are they're going to get mandates from the state on how much water to cut back, or the water district, and then they're in charge of doing that. So they're kind of in crisis management mode, and they'll just keep cutting water back, and then the plants that are drought tolerant will make it, and the lawns and the other plantings that are not won't. So that's where we come in. So we are long-term. So our goal is to educate residents on the benefits of installing sustainable landscapes using drought tolerant plants and water efficient irrigation systems. Next slide, please. So, so the details, those that have attended our presentations have heard this. The most important thing, aside from saving resources and saving water saves us money. And but really important for us is that reducing maintenance costs could also save us money. We don't know how much yet. We're trying to figure out how to quantify it. But Mutual One has a $1 million maintenance contract. How much of that, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of that each year is for pruning? And is it all necessary? So what we're finding ever since we started doing the presentations and talking as a committee is that residents, maybe most of you watching this here, are resistant to the aesthetics of sustainable landscapes because they're not traditionally pretty. This photo here this is what they look like. So the May 20 presentation, the May 20th presentation was part 3 of the series, What Does a Sustainable Landscape Look Like? And the purpose is to sell these ideas and slowly obtain buy-in. So SR members are encouraged to view the 3-part series. If you'd like to send me an email, I can send them to you. Hopefully at some point they will get posted on our website when that's up and running. Over time, the buy-in should cause residents to want sustainable landscapes, and not enough of them know what they look like, or even they're not even sure, that they want them because they don't know what they look like. So that's where we come in. Everybody's asking for drought tolerant landscapes. 25 years ago, people didn't even know what that meant. So we want the same to be true for sustainable landscaping. And by the way, forcing sustainable aesthetics on residents could backfire, where, as many of you heard, a neighbor of mine in front of my building where we have sustainable landscaping was yelling at me about it being the ugliest thing she'd ever seen. And so it's like, wow, people hate these. Next slide, please. I'll be through in a minute.
We're not seeing any of your slides. You have to advance your slides, I think.
No, I'm not. You haven't
No.
seen the slides?
No,
No?
we're
We're
I'm
seeing
seeing
you.
it here. No, Carol, I think it might be how you had your.
Oh, it's me.
the setting
It's my
one.
fault. Sorry.
Okay.
Not a problem.
All right.
I
So
didn't know I could do that.
Barry, so Barry, people have seen the first 2?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
We're
So
okay.
this is the third. All right. This is the third and last one here. So projects underway in this vein. So we're creating photo sheets of plant combinations to promote drought tolerant plants. So we're doing this in collaboration with Rebecca. So this is a draft of what they could look like. So we're trying to come up with options, sustainable landscape options where if people combine certain plants, we know that they're going to be acceptable combinations. Also, tours of sustainable landscapes to educate residents. So these will be in-person tours. We're going to try to organize the first one in July. Develop and add content to our website. We're all about education on these aspects. Continue our outreach to landscape reps and articles to promote sustainable landscapes. Done. Thank you.
And thank you, Richard. Does anybody have any last minute questions or answers to all of the problems?
I have a comment. This is Dale. I'm on Richard's committee, and I want to say that Richard must spend hundreds of hours prior to each meeting. He does a fantastic job. And so if any of you have the opportunity to attend the meetings, please do. You're going to learn a lot.
Wow, I paid him to say that.
I was going to say, yeah, Richard, you must be bucking for a raise.
Yes. Wow, Dale, thank you. You're my biggest supporter, our biggest supporter.
And David, Amanda, do you have a question?
Brad, if no one else has a question, I just wanted to have one comment.
Actually, Dave Epley has one. Then we'll get back to you, Adrian.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I was just asking, where is the link for the third mutual meeting tomorrow? I don't remember seeing it.
If you go to the mutual thing, the agenda's there, it'll give you the link.
So just go to the website and look
Well,
there.
you have to go to the website, go to Mutual 3, and then you'll see the agenda.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Adrian?
Okay, the only point I wanted to make it is that I think that there are so many people in Sustainable Rossmore, the core of which is doing a phenomenal job and lots of research. But I think the publicity isn't getting out. And so we're not getting the support that I think we could get if we had better publicity. And I'm wondering if we couldn't even use I hate to make this recommendation because I know you're going to say, why don't you do it? Which I won't, but a publicity group that makes sure that all our efforts are out there in the Rossmore News, and that when we do have an event, that people are reminded, because we have so many things on Zoom and we schedule them all, and other things come up and we don't remember. Not that we're old, but we just don't remember. But so I think we could do a better job of saying all the activities that we're doing.
Adrian, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you're volunteering. Okay. Unless anybody wants to. Yeah.
That's a lesson in not speaking up. Thanks, Brad.
Hey, Dale, the Army taught me that.
So I have a question.
Shoot.
Speaking of Adrian's comment, I know that Sustainable Rossmore has right now basically 2 job openings. As Adrian described, sort of a publicity chair and also a, what am I thinking of? Sorry, I can't think of the word. Brad?
Webmaster.
Webmaster.
No, and no.
Don
McGregor.
Oh, program chair.
Program chair, publicity chair, webmaster. We have like 3 job openings, right? So we should, I think, make a point of mentioning that in emails to our members and at the opening of every meeting.
And at the end of every meeting.
Yeah, our job openings that we're looking to fill.
And it would be helpful if there was a very brief description of what would be entailed in that job.
And Barry, since you're becoming our Zoom expert, would you look into, the Zoom, if Zoom has the capability for us to lock everybody in place until they agree to volunteer and fill our positions?
I would suggest instead, if you the job descriptions to me, I can include it in what we send out with the meeting.
Okay, and we can do that.
Okay.
And we will do that.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any other comments or questions?
Brad, I just would like to say regarding the sustainable landscaping that when you leave Rossmore, you go past the gate, that the landscaping that's in the median there is absolutely beautiful. And it looks to me like a great example of drought tolerant
I second that, Alice. Yeah.
And I'm guessing you probably have Rebecca to thank for that. Is that reasonable, Paul?
Yes. Obviously, the olive trees were already there.
Right, but
but when the city of Walnut Creek turned it over to Rossmore, the maintenance, she took it over and redid the planting under the oak trees. So.
Well, it just always makes me smile as I'm leaving Rossmore. I just think it's just beautiful.
And maybe you're smiling because you're leaving Rossmore.
No.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? In that case, let me thank everyone for sticking with us and being a part of this august group.
Thanks, Brad.
Certainly, David.
Nice,
Ho-
great meeting.
Thanks, Paul. And we're more fun to be had.
Informative. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Patty.
Thanks, everybody.
Mm.